It's so unfair. Got me right where you want me, but I'm too prepared. Hello, friends. How are we doing today? Thanks if you're tuning in on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or if you want to catch the recap on YouTube or Spotify later, I'll have it out for you. If you've seen the post or seen the title, we're coming on today to talk about the dark side of spirituality no one is talking about. And before I get all you clickbaiters in a twist, I would just like you to know these are based on our direct experiences with multiple people. It's a very heartfelt, heart-led conversation. We're not here to speak derogatory about anybody. We're just here to inform people about red flags that you might be able to see for yourself on what we would call the spiritual journey. So today I have my platonic soulmate, Teagan, coming in.
Hello.
She's going to come in and recap not only her 6-year journey trying to find her way back home, but also some of the things that she's experienced along the way, along with myself. So just so you guys know what we're going to be going over, if you haven't seen the post, we're going to be talking about psychological manipulation, spiritual manipulation, practitioner red flags, trusting your intuition, and how to leave a toxic place safely. I know we've all been in situations in and out of anything spiritual, and your intuition is like begging you to get out of there, whether it's a job, a bad relationship, you know, you name it. And you know that you need to leave, but you know, people are holding you back, loved ones, relationships, like
trauma
bonds. Yes. So there's a lot of things that we want to navigate. So we really just wanted to come on today and give some tips and tricks, again, based on our own experience. We'll be pulling a lot of the psychological manipulation from the HBO Max documentary, The Vow. It's based on the NXIVM cult documentary. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but basically the leader, Keith Raniere, who's on like triple life sentences for all the crazy stuff that he did, he built this self-help guru cult basically, and you know, he was the top of the pyramid, he was the kingpin on top, and nobody could question him. Everything he said was right. By the end of it, they had a basic sex cult at the very top of the pyramid. Women were getting branded, and the psychological abuse in there that they pulled apart in that documentary is something that I studied to obviously make sure that I kept myself safe while I go out and explore all these spiritual modalities that I try to navigate through my experience and then report back to all of you. So right now I have some questions for you.
What's up?
So right now I really want you to recap the last like 6 years, even as far as like what an awakening really felt like for you at the time, because like when you awaken, I think that's when you start feeling your trauma worse.
Yes.
Or amplified, I think is the best way to say it.
Well, it's just like a new perspective that you have on it that you weren't aware that you had the ability to have, right? So I grew up in the church, you know, very straight-laced childhood. Well, to a degree. I got out of a really like abusive, toxic relationship, and that just kind of like catapulted my spiritual awakening about 6 years ago. And through that, just like finding the journey back home to myself and like learning to rely on me and listen to my intuition and all of those things, it's been quite the journey. I've met like a smorgasbord of people, to say the least.
A smorgasbord of people. I like that.
Some good, some bad, but all learning experiences. So, you know, it is what it is.
Okay, so what really made you want to dive into more of like a metaphysical thing? I mean, I think it's kind of something that you get awakened to and like pulled into, and it's a very explorative phase where you're picking things up and you're putting it down to see like how it can help you grow and further along. Like some things you do for a while and some things you like let it go.
Right.
You know?
So for me personally, I my whole entire life I've been very like drawn to astrology. Like I would remember like being a kid reading the horoscopes in the Sunday paper or, you know, things like that. And then in middle school and my high school years, I just like started digging into it a little bit more. And then, you know, it like gave me this other perspective, like outside of the church that like I always questioned, or, you know, like I was in trouble for not understanding necessarily like what they were teaching us or had to say because some of the things just didn't add up. But I think that everyone's experience is different. So it's like hard to put it into a box per se. Like there's no like right or wrong way to have a spiritual awakening.
I felt like I was leaving a box.
Right.
When I left that belief system specifically. Like I didn't leave like Jesus Christ himself.
Right.
I left the narrative of who and what Jesus Christ was in that box that I felt if I went out of it, it's like, oh no, that's bad. You don't do that. You
we
don't
like
explore
discovered
that.
the true meaning of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
unconditional love that comes
The
along
unconditional
with it.
love, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. It gives you this like sort of cognitive dissonance, I guess you would say, that like one thing feels right to you, but you've been taught this other thing your whole life. And so it's like just the process of like figuring out what resonates with you and what doesn't. And like I said, everyone's journey is different. So
well, and I think that's a really good thing to point out right now is everybody is going to have like their own perception and their own direct experience. So just because like we didn't have such a good experience with like certain practitioners that we came across doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to happen with everybody that meets that person. You know, like maybe it'll be different for those people. I mean, I guess you can like fingers crossed only hope, but there were so many, like when you think of idols and anti-idols, like sometimes I do learn better from anti-idols sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really great things that I learned from these people that I've definitely distanced myself from because I just realized like I think I'm only supposed to learn a certain amount. I'm supposed to come take it in, almost look in the mirror again and go, is this for me? Is it not for me? Is this for me? Is it not for me? And when you get with somebody where you're not allowed to do that, you're not allowed to use your intuition, right, and they're sitting there and they're going, no, this is for you. This is your path.
I am source, I know.
Yeah, I am source, I know. Like, I think that was like, just to get into red flags, like one of my biggest red flags that I've seen in interviewing people, working with countless numbers of people, just trying to figure like my own self out was if anybody ever made me feel like they had a connection to source God creator that I apparently didn't have because I was just so clouded or I had PTSD.
Right. Or even
at the time,
like those that are like, well, I've been doing this longer than you, so blah, blah, blah. And while, yes, you do gain wisdom with experience and like how long you've, you know, been on this journey and the amount of research you've done and so on and so forth, but to acknowledge that or to like put out and say that like I know more than you or like I know everything.
Yeah, and when you like bring it
crazy.
in, yeah, because I think like you're having two types of intuition coming to you, and I believe in a channel. I believe we're all conduits for the divine. I know there's a million different ways that us as humans are trying to like figure out like what the hell we're doing here, you know, how to make ourselves better on a mind, body, and soul level. So like all of the things that we're talking about, I think they're a rite of passage so you can get stronger with your intuition and stronger with your discernment. But just because they're spiritual doesn't mean they're safe. Right. And I think at first you'll meet people who are like, oh, we speak the same language. Like, I feel like I can trust them. You know, I've really unburdened myself in these groups.
They see me.
Yeah, so they see me. Yeah. Well, I mean, talk about abandonment issues and like inner child issues. Like that's the one thing is like when you come into this awakening, you're feeling everything that you've suppressed for so many years. And this person is like, all around you. You're like, oh, it feels so good to be seen and honored and loved and respected. And then I think you said this the other day too, where you're like, watch how they treat other people. Watch what they say
or watch
about
how
other
they treat
people.
You when they need something from you versus when they don't need something from you.
Very true. And then like my favorite one that I think is just widespread mania in the spiritual everything is spiritual HIPAA.
Oh God. Yep.
So from a medical standpoint, what is HIPAA?
It's basically what like keeps all of your information safe, right? Like if say I'm your practicing doctor and if I were to go to Cheyenne and be like, hey, that person over there is my patient and this, and this is what's wrong with them, you can't do that. Like you have to keep their information private and safe because of laws for that. Like even like family members, if they're not listed or if they're not the DPOA and stuff like that, then you can't legally give that information. So to do that in a spiritual sense, I feel like is almost worse.
Yeah.
Because
it'd be like your therapist going and talking shit about you or about what you just confided deeply in them to
yeah, but it's such like
everybody.
It's anything in this path of like Reiki or sound bath, like meditation, like any of that stuff, you have to be like very raw and open. I don't want to say vulnerable because that kind of attaches fear a little bit, but it is true because it is scary.
But if you're going in there and working on vulnerability,
right.
Like that was my thing.
Right.
I was like, I came here to cry in front of people and not feel like dying.
Right.
Like feeling like it's okay to cry. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay that these things happen to me, that I put myself in these situations and I experience these. And you have this overwhelming sense of like love and understanding and appreciation. There's like zero judgment in the group. There's so many things that you're like, oh, it's so nice to like finally find this in a sense. But then again, like the illusion starts dripping off in a bit. And obviously, like I'm not saying I put practitioners on pedestals. Like the only person that's on a pedestal in my life is Jesus because he's proved to us like how good he did at being human.
Right.
Or, you know, however you want to view Jesus. Like he did really good at being nice to people, at not judging people, and like truly being unconditional love all the freaking time. So then you have these people that I know their true intention is to like be love and light, but they try so hard to be love and light that I think it dehumanizes them.
Well, there's also a certain amount of toxicity that comes with like,
oh, I'm cold.
that comes with like preaching about love and light. Like if you find a practitioner that's like love and light all the time, blah, 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 it's inauthentic. Everyone has bad days. Everyone has those like darker moments. And I personally feel like that deserves just as much love as your happy and good times because it's there to teach us something.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that Buddhist thing where it's like purify your disposition. So many people are like, oh, you have to rid yourself of every speck of darkness in you so then you can be light. And it's like, well, I think going and hugging your shadow self, like that side is still you. It's the neglected side of you. It's all of these things of you that you've literally like pushed off over here. So, I mean, that's a great segue into like practitioner red flags. Like we can go through psychological manipulation with the NXIVM documentary again. He was so good. They use like certain terminologies to like, they would come and they would be like, oh, like this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm doing. And they would basically just be like, well, you're not in a place to like trust yourself right now. You're super traumatized. You just started. And it was a really great way of like breaking people down and then building them back up in the most traumatic and psychologically damaging way possible. What happened in the NXIVM documentary, I can thankfully say has not happened to me. What I can say that is a degree. Comparative, what I can say is a comparative, and I actually watched the NXIVM documentary, and they play all of the...
Mind-blowing, by the way, 10 out of 10 recommend.
Yes, please go watch it, and then like send us an email and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. But the thing that I noticed is like when he would be doing all of these workshops, he like knows everything, right? So he would ask questions, super simple questions to the class. And, you know, from my observation, like these people answered the question correctly. And he would be like, oh, you're not there yet. Like, not quite. Right. So I found myself in a classroom setting one time, and I was really excited to learn this material in person instead of studying it on my own. I really wanted to put in everything that I learned into action. And I was sitting in this class. He asked a very super basic question. I wish that I could remember it. And I answered it like tenfold. I answered it tenfold because I always give away too much info. And these are some of my favorite topics. And I remember like feeling very confident about my answer. And he was just like, not quite. And then when he would like speak it back, it was like basically the same. Yeah, like the same thing that I said. But at that time,
just
I was
having
like,
to be like the smartest person in the room, kind of a thing.
I think that's the thing.
Which is also like what Keith Raniere did to his like disciples in the cult, per se.
Yeah.
So it's like on the topic of like spiritual and psychological manipulation, like if you have a practitioner that's telling you like disregard your intuition or like making you doubt yourself or feel like you have to like you're too powerful and it's too intense and that they can't handle it, or like makes you deny your connection to source because they've been doing it longer and they know more than you, or like their own form of bypassing per se. Like I had a personal experience where I went to a practitioner and I was like, hey, like I am feeling very triggered by this. Like, this is what my intuition is telling me, blah, 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 blah. And I was therefore made to doubt my intuition because I was triggered. And I was speaking from a PTSD state and it wasn't like actual reality. So, yes, triggers are like they put you in more of a fear frequency, but they're also there as like a warning.
Yeah, it's like, what is that quote that I love saying? It's like, thank your triggers for they show you where you're not healed.
Yes. Yeah. Or show you how much you've healed based on how your triggers are affecting you.
True, because I think there's a misconception, especially in spiritual healing, that you can go in and do like this modality like 1 to 5 times. And you're going to be like, I'm not going to be triggered anymore. And then you get into the situation and you almost disassociate from the trigger.
Yeah.
Instead of going into it and seeing how you've changed differently. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like the situation has not changed. So therefore you think you haven't changed. But what if the circumstance doesn't change, but how you react to it changes? Because that is how I measure growth. Like I didn't have a spiritual awakening and then go, well, if I wake up tomorrow and have $1 million in my bank account, I'll be fine. Like I think that's a little silly.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Another thing that I found observing people, and this is multiple practitioners that I've either interviewed or like done sessions with, I'm always curious of like what their spiritual hygiene is. Like, how do they maintain their frequency if they're going to be doing any type of energy work on people?
Amen.
So the thing that I ran across with one person is they're like, oh, I don't have to meditate. I'm fine. I'm totally connected like all the time. Besides, I can't meditate because like I'm so ADHD. I just can't sit down and do it.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that and I was like, we're going to mark that. We're going to mark that as a red flag in my mind because I know what I feel like when I'm completely ungrounded. So I can't imagine wanting to do this type of work all the time and not grounding yourself. Because if you aren't grounded in the physical and the spiritual, it's honestly 100% spiritually, energetically proven that if you are not grounded in your root in the ground doing energy work, all of these like chakras basically are lit, but you are so easily infiltrated, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I'm just disconnected because like one of my favorite sayings is that like the most spiritual thing we can do as humans is be a human. Mm-hmm. Like that's why we're here. That's what we've come here to do and like live these human experiences. So like we can learn the lessons that we need for our souls, blah, 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 whatever. So when there's like this extreme imbalance between your human 3D life and your spiritual life, like it just is alarming, to say the least. Like some people have more time for their spiritual practices than others, and like that's beautiful and wonderful, but there needs to be like some type of balance when it comes to that.
Well, I think that's what brings us into like spiritual integrity.
Yeah.
So like there's a practitioner I know and I love. She only does it like when she really feels she can offer and be of service, and like her vessel is clear.
Yes.
Right. And like as clear as it can be. Her cup is full. And then there's other people that have decided, they're going to make these practices their all day, every day, like their 9 to 5, their salary, their livelihood. And I think when you put so much pressure on yourself to like heal or do energy work or all of that, you kind of get delusional in the fact that you don't have to sit down and take care of the human aspects of life. And I think we find that, not just that, but I've also found like there's a bypass of human desire that people try to put a spiritual twist on. You know, like they pretend like they're just rid of human desire. They're like, oh, I don't need anything. I'm happy with this. And I'm like, no, like, sure? Yeah, I think, you know, I'm getting a little bit of bullshit in my head. Yeah. You know, and again, like these are just things that I observe like from a mirror standpoint, because I'm like, does that perturb me? Because I actually might be doing that in my life. Yeah. And I would take it back home and I would journal and I would like assess myself, because especially like where I was in my life and where I am now, like I'm two completely different people, and it's been like a 6 to 8 month process of auditing and ridding myself of people that don't serve me.
Right. Since my awakening alone, I've died and been reborn countless amount of times. I can't even begin to count.
So true.
Completely different person.
Hold on. Rasta had something really good to say. I want to show everybody. So he said, identifying our triggers is important for a healthy recovery. Yes, there are alarm systems. Then I had an action plan to get back to the me well, which so perfect. So true. Yes. Thank you for putting that in there. Because it is true. Like, you're going to revisit like the same traumas, the same this over and over and over. But it really is like, are you going to fall into the pit more and just lay there and go, oh God, here I am again. Like I'm down in a hole. Or are you going to be like, oh, this is how I'm feeling today. So I'm going to add this to my self-care routine. Maybe I'll exercise a little more. Maybe I'll put a different fruit in my smoothie, you know, and that's just my experience.
So with the trigger part as well, like that, like kind of tree branches into another practitioner red flag is, when you have a practitioner that plays on your triggers.
Yes, that is a big one. I think of it like almost gatekeeping your trauma. Yeah. So you need them. Yes. Because they see stuff. Complex. Yeah, they see stuff that you can't see. Mm-hmm. Which there's an innocent version of that. Like in our friendship, we call it, hey, do you mind if I call it one of your blind spots for a minute? And like you ask first, you don't just go, hey, like I asked you permission. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'm like, do you want to see this today? Okay. Like, we'll just talk about it later. But then there's like the negative aspect that you talked about where you're like, no, my intuition's kind of doing this. And it's just like, well, I had this vision, you know, like perfect example is if you've ever watched Escaping Twin Flames with those two creepy people that make the whole twin flame movement look cheesy, delusional, and just like completely out there. Mm-hmm. But this guy was like pairing people with other people, and then would be like, you know, that's not for me. That's not doing it. And he would be yelling at them because he believes he's Jesus Christ incarnate also.
Red flag.
Red flag. And he was basically like, I have talked to God directly for you. You can't talk to God the way that I can. Big red flag. Like we all have our own connection to source. Like if you're a Bible person and they talk about like the likeness and image of God, that clearly translates over that you have a piece of him, her, however you identify God to you in your personal relationship. So when you find these people that are like, I know more than you in some stance, that it just kind of creeps you out. And the reason I want to talk about this is you are so freaking vulnerable when you are unraveling all these layers of yourself. Like you're learning to trust again. So you're like, okay, maybe I am triggered a little bit. Mm-hmm. So like, let me investigate. Let me see this more. You know, another thing is if you want to go to a practitioner and you ask like for references or like if anybody does it, like if so many people have had a bad experience or just like not what they wanted out of it, I'll probably skip over that practitioner too.
Right.
And that even comes to like online marketing, which we'll get into that later. So you can kind of, because online marketing is super tricky now, especially with like
this new age spirituality movement.
This new age stuff coming back around all the time. So man, where do I even go from here? Okay, I want to talk about something that is super easy to do, even though we all don't mean to do it. But I think that learning what bypassing is and a healing journey, a spiritual journey, I think everybody is going to bypass whether they think they're not bypassing or not. I think if you can consider yourself having a spiritual awakening, more like 10 out of 10, you'll probably experience a spiritual ego for a while, because like you're so busy judging yourself at first that you don't even realize that you're doing that to people.
Yeah.
And I think it's truly like an awakening and awareness to go, oh my God, I'm literally doing that.
But that's where like weekly check-ins come in, right? So like we have a buddy system where we're like, whoa, going a little farther, you know, like let's dial it back a few steps. But I feel like especially with these practitioners that like make this their life, like, don't get me wrong, with experience comes knowledge, but we all are a conduit for the same knowledge. So what did Ross just say?
He said, when I was counseling, my goal was to teach people to not need to come see me.
Right.
Same thing.
So with that being said,
yes, we'll leave that up for a minute. That's very true.
It's so true, because if you have a practitioner that's like, you need me, I can be the only one that can help you through this and this and this and this, and I won't leave you.
Yeah, I'll never leave you.
Yeah, they prey on these like weak spots. Like for me personally, I struggle with abandonment really bad. And I've grown a lot. I've gotten a lot better with it. And like journeyed back into myself and, you know, like given myself the love that I give others. And it's been a pretty fun journey. It's been challenging as hell sometimes, but I'm getting there, you know? And so when you are in this line of like this modality of healing, like whether it be Reiki or meditation or
sound baths,
like any of it, you know, if you never want to give these parts of yourself away to somebody that's going to say, you can only do this through me. You want a practitioner that's going to teach you how to get to these places on your own, because every single one of us is capable of it. It's just a matter of like discipline as well.
Well, discipline and the recognition and like, again, the constant check-in of, am I outsourcing my power again?
Yes.
Did I accidentally go like for help and a little bit of validation about what's been going on with me? But now I've just like completely outsourced my power again.
Yeah.
It's no shame. It's no embarrassment. Like we're humans. We're literally learning all of these things that we've never known before.
Yeah. And honestly, somebody who hurt me very deeply once taught me that don't judge where the information came from. Don't judge the source.
So if it feels good to you and then you're like, oh, I hate that person, like I can't take that advice or that information because of the person that it came from.
Yeah. Their knowledge and the things that these people say are accurate. And that is like literally, don't judge the source and boundaries keep us safe. Some of the best advice I've ever gotten.
True.
And it's taken me a long way on this spiritual journey of mine. But granted, it also came from somebody who severely hurt me. But that in itself is like, right, so different types of soulmates, different types of contracts, blah, 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 blah. They're all here to teach us things and be mirrors for us to reflect and like finish the agreement that we made before we came here, you know?
I like
however
that,
tumultuous it was.
Again, I feel like you're making me like go into just how scary it is to find personal boundaries in the beginning, right?
It's very hard because this is like, it's such an exciting journey and it's such an exciting process because you're like, I finally feel safe. I finally feel at home. I'm being seen in ways that I wasn't seen before. And
I'm learning things that feel right to me.
Yeah.
Like the thing about every practitioner that I've come to understand is everyone is spouting universal knowledge through their own vessel. Now, is their vessel clogged, distorted, infiltrated in some capacity where even though they're saying the right thing, it's still like the way that they're doing it it's distorted is the best way. Like Teal Swan is the best example that I could think of for this.
Yes.
A lot of the content that she is talking about, she is right in some capacity, but her manipulation on the universal energy is what makes her dangerous. You know, if you're going to sit there and tell somebody, oh, you must be on your deathbed if you're coming to see me, that's pretty cocky. That's pretty
It's
cocky.
pretty something.
Well, and again, like there are so many people going out there doing healings and all of this wonderful stuff. And I think a bigger percentage of them are people that, how do I say it? Maybe don't need to be doing it because they need to work on themselves more. I think there's this love of humanity that people have, but I still think that can, again, be infiltrated over time because you put these blinders on and you have this I am presence about like you're a healer and you're a conduit for source energy in whatever capacity you want to use it for. Even if you just want to say hi to somebody at the grocery store that looks like they're having a bad day, that could easily be source energy, putting that thought in your head, putting that message in your mind going, that person's having a really bad day. Like if you just compliment them or something, I'm sure it could turn their life around just really quick. You know, like that's not your thought.
Right.
But you could easily be infiltrated the other way where you take your personal experiences, your way that you view your life and your unhealed trauma, and then you start teaching from that. And that's when it gets dangerous for me because you're teaching other people something that is just based off your perspective and completely polluting the purity of the metaphysical information.
Right.
Which, I mean, at this point.
So that kind of branches into like the other day we were just talking and stuff and having coffee with a friend. And Shane starts talking about how like all of these different modalities between like Reiki or sound baths or like chi machines, quantum healings, all of this stuff is a branch off of source energy, which is pure and it's whole, you know. And then there's all of these other things who, well, yes, Reiki is effective and it works, just like meditation does. If you are learning purely based off someone's experience and not how it feels or resonates inside your body, then it's distorted.
Well, that even makes me think of like a practitioner almost getting an addiction to spiritual energy. Like they get a high off of what they see in the meditations, off of the trauma of their patients. And it's not like like a Christ-like loving, oh, I see you, like, I understand you, let me help you. It's more like, you're going to be with me for a while. You know, which is honestly like dangerous because I think a lot of us are coming in like as a human collective are coming into, wow, the body really does keep the score. And that thing that happened to me when I was 6 years old is still playing out today. Oh, that's crazy. But when you have, again, somebody there that is just kind of giving you cognitive dissonance while you're trying to learn yourself is probably the best way I could say. So then like spiritual communities, like let's get into that. You find a group, a class, a practitioner, you're really vibing, you're really learning stuff. But then you start getting these inklings from your intuition that something just isn't right. But now you're hooked in with all of these people and you love being with them and looking forward to the days that you're with them. And again, something just isn't right. Like something's off in the building when you walk in. There's something about the practitioner that just isn't sitting right with you and you can't figure it out. These are all your intuition trying to guide you. Like maybe you wanted to get into Reiki and then when you started doing it, you're like, no, I don't think I'm like into it as much as I thought I was. I think I just want like basic education so I can help myself. And then this practitioner comes to you and they're like, no, you're literally meant to be like the most powerful Reiki master in the whole entire freaking world.
Telling people that they're ascended masters.
Yeah, like, if they're like, you're an ascended master, like you came back to help humanity. It's like, that's spiritual a lot. That is a lot on my plate. And I am not an ascended master reincarnated. I do believe in reincarnation. I'm a big, big fan of that. Soul contracts. Yes. But ascended master literally means they have ascended. Therefore, they do not incarnate in human spirit. Why? You know, like, let's just leave that open-ended and everybody can use it for their own experience. But again, when you get in these groups, Teagan brought up that you can trauma bond in group therapy without realizing it. Like you have someone that could literally speak your story to you and you're just like, #me too. You know, like you can create these friendships out of bonds, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, then it like
Out of trauma bonds, I
trauma
should say.
bonds.
Yeah.
Yes, especially when it's like you and I, it's very hard for us to be like open and vulnerable, especially in groups of people.
Yeah, like our arms are usually linked together and we just like put a wall of protection around us. We're like, we're nice, we're approachable, I swear, but we're kind of scared of you because we don't know if you're going to try to like manipulate us in some aspect. I don't know if you're going to take my trauma and hold space or just hold it against me.
Right.
Or go tell everybody my session or the things that I confessed in the class.
Or just complete and utter bullshit that's made up.
Yeah.
Pardon my French. But like all of this talk about like not safe practitioners and red flags and blah blah blah, like there's also, you're gonna like, we don't want to scare you away from taking this path or taking these classes or going to meditations or retreats or whatever it is, because there are also like insanely safe people out here. And Cheyenne and I met at a meditation 2 years ago on 222.
22.
22. It was a portal. It was a beautiful
The
experience.
meditation was at 222.
Yes. But like from the moment, like before we even had introduced each other, I was like giving my astrology talk and just explaining like the energies that we were working with and blah, blah, blah. And like eyes locked immediately. Like it was just like a safe place. Like I quit fidgeting with my jacket and my hair because I was nervous. Like I was just like tuned in and I felt just like this overwhelming aura of like calmness. And you will also run into people like that. So it's not all of this like fear, like,
this is a very
it's just an awareness,
educational episode for you. Like we don't want to scare anybody off. This is what you should look for though. You should audit your practitioner. Do not put your practitioner on some weird pedestal. If they're like, I've been doing spiritual work for 20, 40, 50 years and I have 100,000 certifications, and the Dalai Lama called me one time and said he would love me to do Reiki on. I'm like, I don't give a shit what they've done. You audit these people, you observe, you don't attach, you take the information that's meant to you, and you leave when your intuition tells you to get out the door. Because even if you leave, if you're like, I'm done, my cup is full here, I've learned what I need to learn, and I go, and you move on positively, great, you're listening to your intuition, you're following your path. If you leave a community that you realize there is a massive amount of falsities, disillusions, abuses, and just straight up hypocrisy as far as the practitioners or whoever there goes, and you're like mad dash out of there, you're going to realize that next flip of the notebook.
And the thing about it is, like, I feel like we need to touch on a few more points before we go into that.
I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. Flip back.
We will get there.
Okay. Cliffhanger.
Tree branch. I would like to talk about my meditation experience, the first time I astral projected.
Okay, so spiritual manipulation. What is your best definition of what spiritual manipulation actually is?
So we've kind of touched on it a little bit already, right? So like prying on your triggers, or when you've like made progress on your triggers, kind of like regressing you back into the state that you were in prior to like having these realizations or like these big steps in movement and in your healing journey with it. So one time several times I've had my meditations manipulated, or
I'm holding it together.
Sessions. Okay, sessions.
So the specific story that I want to make sure you're going to tell, I quoted it. It says, I brought you back.
Well, I've been told that by a couple different practitioners, actually.
Okay, so this is a really, really big red flag that I've found.
Really big red flag.
Okay.
So I was in a group meditation as well as like a private one-on-one session. It's happened with a separate practitioner as well. But it was this specific experience was the first time that I had astral projected. And I had like reached this like very high vibe, like euphoric, like I was floating above my body, and I looked down and I saw me, like sitting crisscross applesauce, just meditating. And it was very euphoric, and it was like, I just don't even have the words to describe it, honestly. And I've done it since then, but my first time, it was like kind of scary a little bit. When I realized, or like came to the realization that like I was in fact astral projecting, I was like catapulted, slammed back into my body.
Didn't even know how it happened
incredibly aggressively. And so I was immediately filled with fear. I got up, broke the meditation, and started saging the space that we were in.
You're like, veil.
Yeah, I was like, cloak, I'm protected. Archangel Michael, come save me. All of the things. And so the meditation finishes and everything's fine, where the practitioner is asking other people about their experience, just kind of like graced over me. And later, this individual was just laughing. And I was like, nothing is funny. That was terrifying. Like, what the fuck just happened to me? And I was told that I was going too far and I brought you back. Another time that had happened to me in a private one-on-one session with a different practitioner, that I thought, so I had this experience. I've had a couple bad experiences with practitioners per se. The second one, I thought that like I was learning all of the lessons from like the first time, like that I was on the right path, that like I had overcame like the experience and the lessons that I was supposed to learn with the first one. Turns out that was not the case.
It's like when you break up with somebody and then you're like, okay, I learned my lesson. So the universe sends you kind of like the same exact energy
in a different body
to see if you actually learn the lesson.
Right. And sometimes I put my blinders up because I am not mentally ready to acknowledge that that person is not as safe as I thought that they once were, because
or you like want them to be.
Right. So with my first experience alone with like a spiritual practitioner of any kind, I like, that's all that I had to base my information off of, right? Like I had just been like self-led with me, like journaling and like researching all of my astrology stuff. And, I found a lot of like clarity and guidance just through that alone. But when it's your first time around, like you don't really know the things to look for and the signs to be like, actually, that's not okay to do to people. I
always have to check their mental state. That's my thing, like as best as I possibly can. Like if you personally know this person and they do this type of work,
right?
Like that's where I'm like, okay, everybody's human. We all have experiences, but like, how are they handling these experiences? Are they bypassing their own experiences and then coming on a platform in a teaching stance and being like,
right,
all of this isn't even happening. The only thing I have to focus on is the energy.
So after that first bad experience, and don't get me wrong, like I learned a lot from that person, and
me too.
And I wouldn't, right.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't take it back by any means. I learned a lot about like my own self-worth.
I would have got out the situation.
Yes.
I think that's the thing. Like if I knew what I knew now.
Like I love you, but not enough to hurt myself or sacrifice the peace that I now have in my life.
Absolutely.
Is how I so strongly feel. Also, like there was a big time in my life where I was like, I gathered an insane amount of spiritual PTSD. It took me like a solid 6-7 months, if not longer than that, to finally allow another practitioner to like fully have access to me and my energy. And then I was tested again, and here I am.
See, I think it's inspiring that you still even wanted to open up your own energy.
I just feel like it's one of those things where it's like the love that you give always returns, and like,
yeah,
never regret being like a good, don't get me wrong, I make mistakes and I am not the best person alive. I'm no Jesus or Mary Magdalene, but it's like I genuinely have good intentions with people, and I'm not like out to hurt anyone. Not to say that these people are out to hurt anyone or anything like that. It's just like,
maybe they're just misguided and have their own blinders on.
yeah, like never regret giving love to the wrong person, because your behavior says everything about you, just like theirs says everything about them. Like I personally used to get really upset whenever there's this quote that talks about how like narcissists are the best storytellers, and how they'll like twist stories and, you know, everything that is true about the situation to make them the victim. And so I used to get really upset about that because I was a little spiritual baby and I didn't know, you know, but then I realized that, you know, like at the end of the day, like I know what you did, you know what you did, God, source, universe, creator, whatever you like to call it, knows what you did. And like, you'll have to live with that, just like I lived with it and got the lesson that I needed out of it.
My notes say, my conscience is clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even though, like, so I go back through everything and I don't just like look at the other person. Like, I also look at how I acted in the situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I was going through, how they responded to what I was going through, or who I was at that time. And either like, were they manipulating me? Were they using me for their own personal gain? All of these questions that I've asked myself. So like, I don't tell these stories from even me sitting on a pedestal or a victim mindset. Like, I can't believe this happened to me.
Not a victim at all.
Yeah. I think it just comes from, this is extremely,
I'm
like my discernment and my intuition is we're thick as thieves.
Oh yeah.
Right. You know, like I have these things that I am so grateful that I get to look out for. But can we please go into how to leave a spiritual community and what could potentially happen now?
Look at this. I try to meet people where they're at and consider some are just spiritually sick. Yes.
Well, again, that goes back.
Spiritual egos.
Yes, that goes back into an addiction to the energy. So, yeah, for me, when I had a heart chakra expansion and I woke up like someone dosed me on shrooms, but I was like literally laying in God's arms in bliss. And I understood the interconnectedness of everybody and everything on earth. And I just wanted to be of service to humanity, but I had no fucking clue how.
Right.
I loved that energy. I started getting into the modality so I could maintain this happy, loving interconnectedness. And it's been like a roller coaster of 5 years of understanding, like, I am a spiritual being having a human experience. I want a human experience. I don't want to be one of those weird fucking people that are like, I'm an enlightened being and I'm about to vibrate off the planet. The Galactic Federation just told me that. Like, no.
Don't do that.
If you are standing with someone and Elon Musk's Skylink is in the sky and they tell you, oh, that's the Galactic Federation, I talk to them all the time. Get the fuck out of there, okay? Just don't do it. Like, and you can come back from being spiritually sick, but you could also stay in a weird psychosis the rest of your life. And the worst part is you can give that psychosis to anybody else you think you're trying to help. That's probably the worst thing for me, is a lot of these, especially these bigger name practitioners that people are just like dying to follow like a guru. You have no clue.
Keith Rainier still has followers.
Keith Rainier still has followers
of his prison window.
Yeah. And they dance for him and they do Morse code to talk to him because they are that psychologically brainwashed into believing that at one point he told them having sex with him is how you get to God. And he's not the only person that does that. But this isn't an episode on false tantric practitioners. Maybe we'll get into that another time.
That'd be fun.
But these are a lot of red flags as far as whether you're just getting into it, a newbie, or like, if the vibe doesn't match, the vibe doesn't match. You don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be like, oh, there's something wrong with them.
Well, there's a difference between talking shit and talking energy.
Energy is truth. It's like slang for truth.
Yes. Like and even with that being said, like sometimes you just don't energetically match with another person, and that's okay. It's not that you've done anything wrong or they've done anything wrong. It's just, it's not an energetic like frequency connection that you have there.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. Sometimes it's
And if you find yourself in the middle of a beautiful spiritual community that you think you're safe in, and then you go, I gotta get out of here. This shit ain't right. You know, like
sometimes you rip the band-aid off and leave, and sometimes you leave gracefully in the most peaceful way you could possibly do. But it's whatever your intuition leads you to say and feels right inside of your vessel.
If you do leave a spiritual community and after you leave, you find out just how toxic it is. The Nexium Corporation was a great example of anybody that spoke against the practices, the classes, the practitioner, Keith Rainier and Nancy, whatever her name is, as soon as they wanted to leave, they were like ostracized, exiled, they were demonized. All of their information, like all of their unburdening was completely exposed, like
used as blackmail.
It was used as blackmail against them to leave. So if you find yourself in a community where you've bonded with like your classmates, but you've clearly seen through the veil of illusion in the person that you're with, and you're like, this is unsafe for me to be here. I don't want to be with this person anymore. I actually know what you're doing. I know that you're talking about everybody's personal issues to everybody else when you're supposed to be a leader, when you're supposed to have integrity, when you're supposed to be a safe space, when all of that melts off of your face and you're like, my goodness, like no wonder like this type of healing is so freaking demonized itself is because people just poison the practices.
Well, yeah, and that's just the new age spirituality thing too, which is where like truly listening to your discernment, like what is the saying, like your intuition is going to be like a soft whisper and fear is going to be like a loud thump, like a scream, right? Like your intuition isn't going to be like inducing fear, it's just going to be like, this is the truth of the situation. And that like gut feeling, right, like it's there to teach us things and to warn us. And if you warning signal.
If you deny it, I do love how it doesn't give up on you.
Oh, it starts as like a gentle tap, and then it's
hey,
a little bit harder.
Time to go.
And then it's like the FBI knocking on your door, and then they're throwing bricks through your windows.
Yeah. So, and you're like, you're getting like
one way or another symptoms. You're gonna listen.
Yeah, like you're feeling definitely weird. But again, if you find yourself in somewhat of a Nexium issue and you're scared to leave because you think this person's going to ostracize you or demonize you or say stuff like their heart was never open, you aren't the problem. Okay. And it's really hard for you to understand that after you leave and pull away from all of these new relationships that you've built, because there will be like a hermit isolation mode. There will be cognitive dissonance where you're reevaluating everything, where you're like, okay, what's for me? What's not for me? What do I need to get away from me?
The cognitive dissonance is so extreme because you go from being in a place that you felt like safe and secure and like that was home, right? Like you finally found like a community that was where you were supposed to be, whether it be just like a step in your journey or whatever it is, it's still like a safe, what you presumed as a safe space, right? And then you start like your higher self like starts making you listen to your intuition, right? Or you have a best friend that makes you through subtle ways.
Call me when you're done.
Yeah. I'll be over here.
I love you so much. I love you so much. I'm willing to respect your free will, even though I would do anything to kidnap you and get you away from this.
Oh yeah. And it's just like we've both had experience with similar practice, like, you know, it is what it is. And at the end of the day, neither one of us are perfect, but we still have that like check-in, so that auditing system within ourselves where we can realize these things. We bring these like dirtier, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like less pure parts of ourselves to the light so we can like acknowledge and reflect on why that's there in the first place instead of like projecting it onto people. Like mirrors, great. Not a physical mirror that you see yourself in. I'm talking other people that teach you things. I see you, you see me, but also you're gonna like be reflected the parts of you that you don't see yourself. And that's oftentimes where triggers and things like that come from. So any of these experiences like are all here to teach you some lesson at the end of the day. And whether you choose to become victim to it or you choose to find the lesson and like see the purpose in that experience that you had is completely and solely up to you. That's where free will comes into play. But I mean, I've really made quite the improvement on quantum leaping these lessons and like not having to just sit in it and suffer for so long. And it's beautiful. I really enjoy it.
I just think it's important to realize that no matter if you go to church, if you don't go to church, if you don't believe, if you go to a sound bath, if you go to a meditation, whatever modality you want to choose, just trust your intuition. Trust that your connection with source, creator, God, whatever you would like to call it, they have your back. And even though you're liking what the person is saying, you're liking the community, if your intuition is like, you got to get out of here, this isn't right, then your path is different from this. Maybe it's a different practitioner 5 years from now that you'll get into, and that's the one you're supposed to be with. That's why they got you away from this one. Not saying that this one is bad. It's just not your person.
Right.
You know, but at the end of the
frequency
day,
thing.
it's absolutely frequency.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. But at the end of the day, like, for my people, like my cult people that are coming on soon, like they lost their families, they lost their friends. Again, they were demonized, ostracized. They tried to basically destroy like their character to people because they had zero lack of accountability in what they were doing. They didn't want to step up to the plate. They didn't want to take time off and be like, oh, maybe I should go work on myself. So it's very important if you are a newbie to trust yourself. And a lot of the inner work isn't fun. And inner work truly is like a solo journey for a while. Like hermit mode is there for a reason. Journaling, meditating, reconnecting with your body, crying. I know that you want a community to like help out too, but like keep it limited when you're working on yourself is what I've found. I do all of my best work in my solo times. I come out and I'm cleansed and I feel so good. And then I call my best friend and I'm like, I gotta show you what I just found inside my damn self.
Like as overplayed as shadow work is, it's truly so like transformative in ways that like I can't even begin to describe. There was one point in time actually where I was wanting to teach a shadow work course because it was so transformative for me, and it goes very deep into, so you know, another one of these things that I've learned where it's like don't judge the source is like heal the tree at the root. And you know, the root, whether that being inner child or like that inner teenager that's still mad at your inner child for, or not at, but like for your inner child for not being protected or nurtured in the ways that they wanted to be or needed to be. Everything has a deeper root cause than you truly believe. And that's what shadow work helps like bring to the light. And that's again where I will preach about all forms of yourself deserve love. Like these darker forms of us or versions, or, you know, like even mind spaces still deserve love. Whether, I mean, don't broadcast them per se, don't like act out of that mindset or mentality, but it is there to teach you something.
You're right. Like, I don't have a follow-up story. I'm just like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But Ross actually said something cool too. What she said, I put a person's name on the top of a piece of paper and write down all the things I don't like about that person. Then if I scratch their name out and I put mine, I would see what I need to work on with me. Talk about accountability, integrity, and awareness.
That's
10
exactly
out of 10,
what it
Rhino.
is. Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much for saying that. And because I know we're about to wrap up, but I don't know about you, but when I'm scrolling, everybody's got a course, everybody's got a program, everybody's got something online that they're like, I'm going to teach you this, I'm going to teach you this. I honestly think a red flag is if someone tries to teach you Reiki in a day or a weekend, especially multiple levels of Reiki.
God, yes.
Because
Yes,
these people worked years in making their vessel clean and pure. And then you have this person over here with, I mean, no, like they just started working on themselves, I guess is the best way to put it. Like they haven't done the inner work, they haven't done the shadow work, and now they want to learn Reiki
But
and
you
go
also
help
need
people.
that like integration process. Like it's a whole new energy system, a whole new type of energy that's running through your body that can be incredibly overwhelming at times. And so I want to highlight that comment as well.
Read it.
My dark spirituality is connecting to my inner child. My demons come from a lonely childhood and not connecting with the parent. It eventually led to darker places down the road until I was 36 and diagnosed with bipolar. The shadow work allowed me to heal and continues to allow me to. And I love that. And there's so much truth and validity inside of that. That's what it's there for, getting to the root.
I would also like to say I've been on Dan and Rhino's show.
I know, I watched it.
But who knows if our viewers know that.
Oh.
And so Dan is wonderful because he has a mushroom company.
Mm-hmm.
So he's very, very vocal about how psychedelics have really helped him with his shadow work and integration, but also just like doing your diet correctly. Lion's mane is a really big thing that he likes to talk about.
Don't even get me started on diet and nutrition.
Yeah, but let's talk about lion's mane, right? Like, let's rebuild our minds. So I do want to plug Dan for a bit because I love what he's doing in the local community back home, but also online as far as educating people. Rhino is a really good peer support person. So when he's talking about all the things he does for himself, when he goes and works with somebody, he will not advise you on anything he hasn't been through or a modality that he doesn't do or know for himself. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that is such a high level of integrity that honestly, even in modern day psychiatry, you're probably not going to get.
Yeah.
You know, when that doctor hands you that pill, they're not on that pill.
Yeah.
They don't know what's going to happen to you, you know? So Dan, I love you and I appreciate your mushroom work. I just had to shout you out on that really quick. But again, back to the marketing online, something that I've found, and again, just because my research is literally just to go try things, vulnerably share my experiences on here, but also showcase other people's stuff. I want a safe space for all of us to be able to have these conversations where we don't feel rejected or judged. But as I go through the new marketing's awesome. It's only getting creepier. It's only getting more false. And we still are like, how do we trust? One of my red flags that I have found is if someone is like willing to give away like the whole farm to get a client in the door. That's either like, it could potentially be like their client numbers are down and they're just trying to do like a good marketing thing. Another thing is,
you need this amount of classes to reach wherever you're supposed to be going,
or enlightenment, the words out of my mouth.
Imagine.
Yeah. Or if they say I'm an enlightened being and I'm going to show you how to ascend.
Or you're all ascended masters and enlightened beings.
That's why you're all here. Your spirit guides brought you here to me today. Like, I know there are people that use this terminology, and honestly, like, it's true for them is the nicest way I could say it. There are people that are out there healing in the world and teaching people and truly here. So like we said, we don't want to scare you in any way, shape, or form by staying away from all of this. We just want you to know that there is abuse in the spiritual community, especially with psychedelics on the rise. I read articles all the time about these people getting, it's called the Messiah complex, which happens when you take so many psychedelics and you talk to so many higher vibrational beings that you actually think that you're something incarnated like that. And it literally is a psychological disorder. Your frontal lobe is actually just like expanded. And for some reason, it is considered a psychosis. And you can
I look at it as almost like a possession of sorts.
I do too. Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
But I think as far as like, if you were like, am I going through a psychosis or am I going through a possession? This
Which
is like the
also,
spirit and the science coming together.
Speaking of psychosis, that also comes along with leaving these communities that, like, we both left a spiritual community, and it took a long time to come back home to myself, just like it took you, you know? And
I immediately sat down and was like, what the fuck?
yeah,
What
like,
happened?
the cognitive dissonance that a person experiences, it's like leaving a cult. I don't want to say that we were in a cult because
We
that's
definitely weren't in
a
a
little
cult, but
extreme,
I think
but
that's how it does feel, because you immediately are cut off and you don't even tell anybody. You're like, I know shit's fucked. I got the memo.
but once you leave and like you have this space from it, like you start realizing and like rethinking and reprocessing all of these things that were happening while you were there that you just thought like la 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 that we're fine and
I'm
everything,
protected.
and
I'm just learning. Which
right.
honestly, like that is almost like a gullible thing about me, is I want to learn. I want to learn for myself.
But I
I
also
want to
want to
learn
see the
for this
best in
platform.
people.
And I want to see the best in people too. And I want to believe that what you're showing me, like that I'm safe with you. And again, it goes back to that little inner child.
I may be a black cat, but I do have my golden retriever tendencies. So the cognitive dissonance, and when you experience that, it's just like it's back to trusting your intuition. It's going through the material that you've learned or the techniques or modalities and things like that, and figuring out what resonates with you and what doesn't, because not everything is for everyone.
Mm-hmm. That's why I said pick it up and put it down. You're going to know if it's for you, if it's not, over time, and that's just going to build that. Oh, Dan said something else that was awesome. Why Rasta and me make a good team. Rasta has the hands-on with helping, and I have a lot of knowledge I want to share to help people, and we both have went through it. Addictions and mental illness, and wanting to tell our story brought us together. I have personal experience with both of you, and I think that you two are truly those people that are like, you have to feel it to heal it, and healed people want to help heal people. But when I say heal people, I mean show you your power that you can't see and direct you back to you. If I ever worked with anybody, I don't want them to feel like they needed me. I wanted them to have conversations with me and feel like they're safe to have those one-on-ones. And I know that you guys are definitely the same way with the way that you do peer support. Thank you for the kind words, Cheyenne. I am so glad I caught you today. Teagan, nice to meet you. Mayor, thank you, Rhino.
Such a sweetie.
Love it, love it, love it. Love you guys. Again, we don't want to scare any of you. I know we're going to hop off here in a minute. I have a beautiful song from Neovi that's going to get us through, but do you have some advice for just anybody?
I think really the last piece of information that I would say is that, like, while losing people is awful sometimes, losing people brings you back home to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't be afraid to be alone on the healing journey.
Yeah, because
is what I would
everything that you need is within yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, journey within when you meditate, or journey within whenever you're learning all of these different modalities and things, because your guides and your higher self are going to lead you in the right way. It's just a matter of like trusting them, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean,
or having discernment to figure out, because there will be false guides, and there will be like, mm-hmm. intrusive thoughts that you'll be like, well, my guide said this, but it's not like really your guides. It's more of like those, if you're vibrating at a lower frequency, then it's easy to be infiltrated.
Yes, that's a good way to say it.
So just, it's okay to like rely on yourself for certain things. Well, it's also okay to have others to keep you grounded and point out those blind spots that you may not always see.
I love you.
I love you.
You're my best friend. We've been through a lot together, so I'm really glad we could come and do this episode for you. And okay,
I just hope that it doesn't scare anyone.
I don't want to scare anybody, so I do want to tell about a really good experience I had with someone. And this person is not in my life anymore either, but it was one of the first introductories I had to a spirit science episode, I would say. And it's called BioWell technology. And I'm telling all of you this because it is the most grounded perspective that you could possibly have if you're going through a spiritual awakening. And I want you to Google it on your own and look at it. It's a little machine where you can like put your fingers in and it senses a bunch of awesome stuff in your body. Again, I don't have the correct terminology, but the printouts that it gives you about everything in your body and your electromagnetic frequency that you just had absolutely no clue that was there. That's what I would recommend for people over going to a practitioner in the beginning. Because I had a printout of my chakra system on a piece of paper. I could see my different energy vibrations and where they were sitting at and why it was.
Especially if you're a visual learner. I feel like that's so good
visual.
Start, yeah.
But even for me, like my logical side is like, it still wants to say like a lot of this stuff is bullshit because I need physical proof of it. So knowing that I have that masculine aspect of my brain that wants to kick out stuff because, again, like I can't see it, that is my advice that I would say, because that was a very, very good experience. I also have a psychic medium who I just met along the journey. Her name is Jo Flowers, and she is truly one with God who has only used her gift for good for the last 50 years. And because of people like Jo, they're the reason that I love to study these things. I love to bring people onto the show, but I also am a devil's advocate type person. And I'm not going to sit here and just because I have personal interest in a lot of the modalities that we do, that we can't sit here and go, hey, these things come up and we really want to keep people safe.
And that's what it's about at the end of the day, is like actually finding that safe space, which is why we kind of came up with this episode, you know. And it's like, again, I'm going to circle back to when I said, like, I love you, but not enough to hurt myself or to sacrifice the peace that I have in my life. Like if a person isn't adding peace to your already peace that you have, then it's not worth like disrupting your whole entire nervous system for. You can love people from a distance and wish them the best. I wish all of these people that I have personally had ill experiences with the absolute best in life. And I hope that they grow and they taught me the lessons that I needed to learn at the time. And I'm grateful for that. I'm insanely grateful for everything that I've learned. But with that being said, I can love you from a distance. And it's okay to just like have a clean break like that.
I feel the exact same. I'm a big believer of unconditional love.
Yeah.
And I know that the reality of me vibrating in that neutrality all the time in a human being is absolutely impossible. But at the end of the day, like you said, my intention, I have never had ill intention for any of these people or anybody in general to be like, oh yeah, I wish on you.
Right.
Like I don't have that in my heart. I don't have hate in my heart. I allow love to come into my nervous system and help me as much as possible, with still realizing that I'm human and I'm here to mess up a little bit and learn the lessons.
And we will, and we all have.
Yeah. So for anybody listening and watching, or if you'd like to catch the recap later, these are all of our tips and tricks for now.
Trips too.
But if you've had a good experience, if you've had a bad experience, please reach out to us. You know, we can bring you on. We can have a talk about it, because we would like to know how to keep people safe while they're trying to find their way back to themselves and back home, whatever home is to you. I'm a believer that everybody comes from the same awesome, unconditionally loving, vibrating place, so far up the frequency scale our human brains can't comprehend it. And again, that's my belief. It doesn't have to be everybody else's.
So it's the humanity part too. Like there's duality, there's light and dark, but dark's really just the absence of light. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to oneness. So
true. And I think we were born into duality to overcome it and unify ourselves with the divine. So if this freaked you out, I'm sorry. We didn't mean to freak you out. We want you to be loved, find love, and know you are loved. And stay tuned for like our cult members and our NDE episodes, because I'm sure we'll be back with that. But right now, I have Neovi, and he's going to bring you a track called Clean. I love you guys. We'll see you later. Teagan, thank you so much.
Of course.
Couldn't have done it without you, babe.
It's so unfair. It's so unfair. Got me right